Nearly 2 decades in the sports broadcast game, and what a ride it's been. Interviews with the 42nd president, Bill Clinton, to Lakers legends Kobe Bryant and the NBA's all-time leading scorer, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to name a few. I've been blessed to cover and tell some amazing stories, but there were so many more I didn't get to tell. Thanks for tuning in to Untold Truths with Telly. You can catch my very special guest every Sunday during the NFL season on the NFL Today on CBS. He's the one and only JB, James Brown. Mr. Brown, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on Untold Truths with Telly.
Well, it obviously has been a long time since we have connected, been way too long that I've gone from JB to Mr. Brown. I think I like JB a whole lot better. And Kelly, I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Well, the immense respect, I gotta call you Mr. Brown. It's just the way I was raised.
And you know what? And the reason I can't come back at you, because that is exactly the reason I give whenever people hear me, even if I'm talking to someone, Telly, who's 10, 15, 20, 30 years younger. That's just the way we were raised. So I do understand. But please try to sneak in a JB every now and then.
Okay, I'm gonna try, Mr. Brown.
Okay.
No, I'm scared. So there's so much I want to get into, and especially throughout your illustrious career that has covered 4+ decades. Not bad for a guy that didn't even start his career in broadcasting.
Wow. And you know what, Telly, there is absolutely no question. I am truly and humbly blessed to have enjoyed this lengthy of a career. God has truly blessed me, because you're right. I started in corporate America after being cut by the Atlanta Hawks, trying to realize my dream of playing in the NBA. And that's another whole story in terms of the fault there. The responsibility there is on me for not working as hard to stay on top as I did to get to the top when I got to the collegiate ranks. But you know what? This has been an awesome career, as you well know, being as successful as you are. It's been stimulating. I'm thrilled that I've been able to broaden the horizons and do work for CBS News as a special correspondent to kind of satisfy and pique my intellectual curiosity. So it's been an absolute blast.
Well, for people like myself and other sports fans, we've followed your career in front of the camera, but you had quite a career at the collegiate level. Now, I know you didn't accomplish your ultimate goal of making it to the NBA, but that doesn't denounce the fact that you were an all Ivy League player for your last 3 seasons. You graduated from Harvard and with an American government degree. Now, what were your goals, dreams, or ambitions as a 21-year-old JB?
Oh, heavens. My mother and father, God bless them, they always drove home the point that academic excellence was going to provide the bedrock foundation for success in the game of life. Yes, I was blessed to be a 2-time high school All-America, recruited humbly by some 200 colleges. And I wanted to go to the best possible school, play basketball, and enjoy a 10-year NBA career, and then move off into doing something in the business world, whether it was entrepreneurially or within the confines of a corporate, a gig, if you will, or career pursuit. But again, going back to when I graduated high school, I lost track of some of those lessons that my coach taught me. I thought I was working hard, but not certainly the smartest way. But that's what my hope was doing, was along those lines. My mother and father, high school graduates. I love to say, Telly, they had PhDs in drive and determination, wanting the 5 of us kids to go on and enjoy greater things in life than even they did. But I drew immense lessons from them. My father worked 2 jobs. He was a prison guard, Telly, at a local prison. He also drove a taxi cab. And during the holidays, he worked a job as a handyman with the local Avis rent-a-car. Also, my mother could realize her dream of staying home as a mom to inculcate us in the proper way to pursue life with excellence at the core of it. So that's what I was looking to do. And I wanted to pay them back for all of the hard work and sacrifices that I saw as certainly the oldest child in the family. That's what I wanted to do. Look, all that mattered for my mom is that we will be all members as good Christian young men and young lady, my sister, and that God would take care of the rest. That was her biggest thrill, but I still wanted to pay them back.
Now, before we get off your college years, is it true that philanthropist and Professor Cornell West was a college roommate? And if that is so, how deep were some of those dormitory conversations you all had?
Hey, everything I see him doing on TV, he did the same thing in our suites. So actually, I know he and I both just kind of truncate the conversation when we try to explain where we weren't actually roommates. We had quads next doors to each other. So like at a hotel where there was a common door between the two sides of our rooms, we always left the doors open, Telly. So we just flowed back and forth in each other's room. Here's a thumbnail of what Cornell was like. And I should say Professor West, for those who know him, is that he was brilliant. He came in as an advanced placement sophomore and realized by his junior year that his scholarship money was going to run out. He had taken a boatload of courses, things of interest to him. And I think one was either in Far Eastern or Near Eastern studies. So when he realized his scholarship was going to run out, he decided to make the major in the Near Eastern studies. And he graduated magna cum laude, summa cum laude. I mean, he was at the highest rank. He was brilliant. He is brilliant. He's a member of Mensa. So when we would have parties, Cornell would still come to the parties. He'd have books up under both arms. He'd sit down on the couch. He would be speed reading chemical concepts for the test we were going to have the next morning. But when Sly and the Family Stone came on, he put the books down. He got up on the floor and did his mechanical man dancing. He was as hip as everybody. When it was over, he would go back to his books. So fast forward to the next morning when we had the exam, the average score might have been about a 52 or 54. He threw the curve way off by maxing the exam, scoring a perfect 100. He's brilliant. He's relatable to everybody, be it the guy on the street or as he was invited over to the Sorbonne in France to be the keynote speaker on the 100th anniversary of one of his favorite philosophers. Cornell, in the vernacular, could hang in any setting.
Oh, that's a great story. That's a great story. Now, you mentioned before, once again, you had aspirations to be an NBA player, and that didn't work, but you ended up starting off in corporate America. You get bitten by the TV bug in 1984, becoming a sports analyst. At that point, who became some of the influences in your life? I know back then, and rest in peace to the late, great Irv Cross, who became the first Black analyst on national TV in 1971 on CBS, the NFL Today. But at that point in 1984, where did you start to turn your attention to in order to motivate yourself or try to use someone as an influencer or try to copy their style, so to speak?
You know what? I took a lot of notes from broadcasters. And first of all, can I just say thank you for acknowledging the late Irv Cross, who was a human being extraordinaire, just an awesome, awesome guy, a superb football player who loved the sport and had the insight and could work with anybody. So hats off to Irv Cross, and I certainly owe him a debt of gratitude and got a chance. Didn't talk with him as frequently as I would have liked, but did talk with him over the years and was the same honest man of integrity and character off the camera as he was on the camera. But I took notes from a number of people along the way. Bryant Gumbel, of course, who was just excellent as a sportscaster, who also provided the inspiration when he moved on and was tapped to become the co-host of the Today Show, showing that he had the chops, the wherewithal, and the intelligence to be able to do anything and do it exceptionally well. Watch people like Ted Koppel. Back in the Washington, D.C. area, there were some local broadcasters, an anchor like your brother of longstanding in Washington, D.C., Jim Vance was there, Glenn Brenner, a superb sportscaster, and George Michael. So I took notes from a lot of people to see what the best takeaway from each was that I could then utilize it myself. And I was assiduous in my reading, voracious in my reading and my studying to make certain that I could do the job and mechanically be sound. Thankfully, I had an executive producer, Ted Shaker at CBS, who knew that I wanted to become a full-time player at the network level. He was the one that encouraged me to do sports that were outside of the normal. I did rock climbing. I did the water polo. I covered the Tour de France. I did all of those things so that I wouldn't be marginalized and have people think I could only do football or basketball. And football wasn't even a sport that I did either, despite, unlike you, looking like you're still in high school with your trim body. I went up and down in weight and still do. But I learned from the great Bobby Mitchell, God bless him, the Hall of Famer, study, and obviously John Madden, who were tremendous influences on me, Tony Dungy, who gave me a lot of insight. And I tried to make certain that I melded all of that so as to be excellent, no matter the sport, understand the fundamentals, even to host the NHL on Fox.
Wow.
So I did everything, but it was awesome to give me the comfort that I could do a range of things, Telly.
Well, I know this is something that you mentioned before in terms of us reconnecting. And this is something I normally don't do on this show, but people have asked me to unveil some of my untold truths. And you say we're reconnecting because it was 14 years ago. It was 2007 in St. Louis for the Sweet 16. You were calling your first college basketball game after a 13-year stint at Fox doing strictly NFL. And I was a local sports reporter. And I asked my sports director if I could come down and do a story on you. And he ended up saying, sure, I think that's a great idea. He's calling the Sweet 16. He hasn't called college basketball in 13 years. Go for it. So I get down there and you were so gracious with your time and everything. And I did the interview with you, and I'll never forget. You said, hey, here's my personal cell number. If you need anything, call me. And 14 years later, 5 cell phones later, I still have your number and you still respond to my call. And I can't thank you enough. And the impact that you have had on my life, even from afar and even in ways that you may not know, you have impacted my career in so many ways. And I just have to ask if did that just come from your upbringing that you mentioned before, how your mom just wanted you all to be good Christian people and give back and touch people's lives? And I know you touched mine, and even in a way that you probably don't even realize. But I mean, was that part of the reason why you wanted to get into this career, so you could have the platform to do that?
Wow. You know what? First of all the fingers, all the arrows point back to the nuclear family, my mother and father. Make no mistake about it. And that's how they were. Hey, Telly, a lot of it, we grew up in a neighborhood where it truly was about a village helping the neighborhood and all the kids. Look, the great apostle Richard Pryor tells the story about how, if you stepped on Mr. whatever the name was, Mr. Elmo's grass around the corner, and they had a do not walk across the grass sign, not only would you get an earful from Mr. Elmo and family, they call the house, and my mother and father would take care of that when we got back. But that was the ethos. That was the kind of environment that we grew up in. So it was always about helping one another. I mentioned I'm one of 5. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. So we learned to share and to understand that success was dependent upon everybody bringing whatever gift they had to the table for the whole. I just carried that over in everything else that I did, but I also learned covering team sports and having played team sports. In the Bible, they use the example about a human body being comprised of many different parts. And that's how we're supposed to be in a neighborhood. All truth is parallel. What's true in the natural is true in the supernatural. It's true across the board. So if in fact the body has many different parts, the little finger, the fist, the head, the kneecaps, every part of our body contributes to the whole in terms of contributing to the fervent, effectual working of the whole body. And somebody, I heard a preacher one time out of the West Coast, Bishop Charles Blake, use the example. If you think your little finger isn't important, I want you to go out in the parking lot, open up your car door, put your little finger in the door and slam the car door on your little finger. In about 2 seconds, your feet will get involved. You'll start jumping up and down. 5 seconds later, you'll have tears coming out of your eyes. 6 seconds later, you'll be biting your bottom lip. So the point is a humorous example to make the point that every joint supplies. And the key example that I learned when I was covering the then named Washington Bullets, doing both color and play-by-play for them, I remember seeing after a basketball game that the team lost, one of the big stars on the team coming out of the arena afterwards, and a bunch of little kids, wide-eyed, excited to meet their heroes, took a pencil and paper and put it up in the hands of the one big star who was coming out of the gym very upset. And he just took his backhand and smacked the paper away and went on and got on the bus. Telly, I looked at that little kid's face, his expression, his face was crestfallen. He was hurt big time. Thankfully, Wes Unseld, God bless him, was coming behind him, another big star they wanted to see. He took the kid, put him on his lap, sat there, told the bus and the team, you wait. And he sat there, signed the autograph, talked to the kid, gave him some paraphernalia, lifted his spirits. And I said then, if I ever got in a position where somebody even wanted to talk to me, much less an autograph or anything, I would take the time to encourage them because of that example that I saw and also the way we were raised. So Kelly, I'm really glad to hear that that was the case with you and I, because that was not put on. That's just who I am, because I also know the people who helped to pave the way for me, who gave me time when I wanted to have lunch with them, to talk about the business, pick their brains. So I have nothing but a commitment to do the same.
Well, I can't thank you enough. And like I said, 14 years later, it still has had an impact on me. And I appreciate your friendship as well. Now, I really want to get into some of the highlights of your career. Well, what I call highlights. I mean, I'm sure they'll be different for you than they are for me, but you've done so many amazing stories throughout your career. But one that really sticks out for me is August 10th, 2009, the interview with the newly released Michael Vick you did for 60 Minutes. Vick had just served 3.5 years in federal prison. He became one of the biggest stories, not just in sports, but in America at that time. What sticks out when you recall upon that interview you did with Michael Vick?
The things that come to mind, one, before the interview, going to visit him in prison up in Leavenworth, and asking him, look, I'd like to do the interview. I know everybody's after you, but here's what I thought I heard and sensed in you when you spoke to the public before you were sentenced to go to prison. I thought I heard a heart, felt a heart, sensed a heart that was truly remorseful for what you had done, and that you had lost your way, fell prey to being, all the adulation, all the cheering, backslapping from everybody around, but that wasn't you. I said, if that's the case, then I want to do the interview. I'm not looking to make a name for myself. Yeah, I like to do the interview, but that's not the focus. The focus is you telling the honest story behind all that you did. And if you're genuinely remorseful, if you are, then I'd like to do the interview. And by the way, it was going to be my first interview on 60 Minutes. So in the back of my mind, there was a little, antsiness about that, because I'd never done anything on 60 Minutes before, the biggest news magazine show on television forever and a day. And when I met with him in prison, because he owed a lot of money, he had a huge debt to pay off. He had been convinced that he should do interviews for money to pay off the debt. I said, that's the biggest mistake you can make, because every answer that you give, even if it's genuine, will be viewed through the lens of you being paid for the interview. So it wasn't true to you. If you want to do this interview, you do it for all the right reasons, because those people who have control over your future, whether you get back to the NFL, which is what you say you want to do, here are the people who are going to make the decision. Yeah, the owner will have to feel good about it, but guess who's going to turn the owner's head? His wife. And if she looks at your eyes and sees that you're genuine, you're remorseful, you want to walk the road to redemption, she will convince the owner to give you an opportunity to come back. And that's what happened. Here's what I feel, because I know there's still a lot of people who probably won't ever forgive him. He can't worry about that. I talked to him about that point. There are going to be the intractable number of folks who won't ever forgive you. You can't be worried about that. If you're genuine about your remorse and walking the road to redemption, many people believe in a second chance, and you'll get it. And guess what? If it's for the right reason, you will pay off all of your debt. And that's exactly what happened. Hey, Telly, the best indication of how serious he was that with the Humane Society, he was to give them 2 years as a spokesperson trying to convince folks in urban areas, just like the Humane Society does with folks who live in rural areas or semi-rural areas, to talk to those folks because they'll listen to them about the wrongs of dogfighting. My mother-in-law, by the way, loved animals. So she had a major problem with what Michael Vick had been doing, but God bless her, she understood that he was genuinely remorseful for it. And it was a 2-year engagement with the Humane Society to do that. Telly, he's been doing it every year since then, because that's the level of commitment. And oh, by the way, he got back because he felt he had lost his way in terms of his faith, and he's been regrounded, and look at what's happened to him since. So that's the proof in the pudding.
Wow. And how much did Tony Dungy, you and Tony Dungy collaborate during that time? Because I know that Michael Vick did have communications with Tony Dungy, and that was kind of his ally to help him get back into the league. And knowing that if Tony Dungy says that, you know, he's on the road to recovery, a lot of owners and a lot of teams would listen.
There is no better example, finer example of a man of character, integrity, and faith than Tony Dungy.
Wow.
Period. Tony and I did collaborate. We talked about it. And I mentioned when I went to visit Michael Vick in prison out at Leavenworth prison, Tony did the same thing. We went at separate times because we didn't want people following us or getting some hint as to what we were doing. But the reason for such was to be able to, without fanfare, the scrutiny of the bright lights and reporters, to ask him genuinely, where is your heart? What are you looking to do? Are you serious about that? That's what we did. But Tony took it a step further to become a confidant and an advisor, if you will, to Michael Vick. And yes, he was able to tell people that. Tony paid a price as well, too, because with a couple of his foundational efforts, if you will, that he has, he lost supporters. People, you know, resigned from supporting a couple of his outreach efforts because of his support for Michael Vick, because he saw that this young man was genuine. Clearly, there's redeeming value in everybody who recognizes the error of their ways, and to be given a chance to get back on the road to redemption and rightness. And that's what Tony did. And that's the relationship he had with Michael Vick. And we're both very thrilled to see a life reformed, a life transformed, and doing good.
Gosh, these are such great stories. I really appreciate it. And you sharing these. Got a couple more for you because I know your time is very limited. So I'll hit you with this one really quick. I know asking you to rank your stories is like trying to pick a favorite child, but what is one of the most memorable stories, or one that sticks out that you will always remember? I know the Michael Vick interview was my highlight. Yep. What is your highlight?
Well, you know what? And thank you for saying that, because Michael Vick is one of those highlights. But telling, amazingly so, it wasn't even a hardcore sports experience that I had, even though I was amazingly blessed to be able to do a number of Final Fours, NCAA championships as a sideline reporter, to do and host a record-setting 10 Super Bowl events, to also do NBA championships, you name it. I've been blessed to do a number of those. But the story that really touches my heart is when I was assigned to go and cover a group of 12 Special Olympians who were going to
Wow.
climb Mount Kilimanjaro. The overarching aim was to show that they were just as goal and success oriented as able-bodied athletes. And the show was called Let Me Be Brave, a part of the motto of the Special Olympians. Let me be brave, a special climb of Mount Kilimanjaro. That was a heart-touching story to me because we got, with the 12 Special Olympians, we got up to the 16,000-foot level of that 19,340-foot height of Mount Kilimanjaro over in Tanzania. And we encountered a bad snowstorm that kept us camped out at that height for about 2 days. The decision properly was made by the organizers to take the 5 strongest kids to go to the top of the mountain. Another example of true teamwork, and the other 7 would go down. Well, parenthetically, yours truly was told to go down with the kids because they saw your boy the first few days. I was only supposed to have 10 pounds of material in my backpack. I had way more than I was supposed to because at the end of each day, as Black as I am, I was white and exhausted. And people were like, man, what's wrong? And when the guide came over and looked at my backpack and saw 40 pounds of gear back there, he said, no wonder you're struggling at altitude with all this weight on you in your backpack. So they figured maybe it was a good idea to send me back down the mountain with the other 7, but it was an emotional experience. I cried with the 7 that were selected to go back down the mountain because they were invested in this for years, but they also put their hopes in the other 5 to make it to the top, which they did. So it was a true team victory. That is one of the most memorable stories I have ever done in my career.
Wow, great stuff. And I'll get you out of here with this one. When you look back over your life and career, the people you've spoken with, the interviews you've conducted, the lives you have touched, did you ever envision your life turning out the way that it has? And do you feel like you have lived out your purpose?
You know, that's a great question, Telly. I don't think that I have lived out my purpose. And again, I understand that I wasn't invited to preach on the platform, but I firmly believe that God has a purpose for each and every one of us. And I think I am still becoming as I grow closer to understanding what his purpose is for my life so that I will truly be fulfilled. From a career standpoint, I've done way more than I thought I would ever do in this. And I know that is because of his blessings as well. I am still excited about what I do. I'm intellectually stimulated by what I do, but I realize that there's a bigger purpose for what I'm doing. And this is nothing more than me on the platform that he's put me on to make certain that I maximize the opportunities and experiences on this platform for the greater good. That's what I'm pursuing. And I will continue to maintain that insatiable appetite to continue to pursue and do exactly what that is. Heavens, I am actually talking to you from the campus, if you will, the location of the Billy Graham Training Center here in Asheville, North Carolina, in the mountains. Coach Tony Dungy and I, again, collaborating in things that we've been so blessed to do over a number of years, speaking at a men's conference. And yes, while we are absolutely involved in Christian undertakings and endeavors, it's for the common good, because part of what we will be dealing with are the issues of the day, but looked at through the biblical lens and how we're to play a significant role in helping to bring healing by virtue of what we're doing. Because people who remain silent in the face of the challenges that we're facing right now, that suggests to me tacit or complicit involvement with continuing to perpetuate the problem, as opposed to having a voice to speak for what's right and to do it properly, where we're all in this together and we need to recognize that and do something about it.
Well, it looks like you have no plans of slowing down anytime soon, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask, how would you like your broadcasting career to be remembered once you take off that mic for the final time?
Wow. I would hope that, even as you mentioned in our discussion, that I was never too big for my britches, that it was about always helping others like a polished veteran act like you and what you're doing it exceedingly well, that I always was about helping others. Tony Dungy, by the way, and I obviously have a little bit of trouble, even though people might not know it because I'm too dark to blush. I don't to talk about myself very much. I usually try to deflect it on other people, but similar to what Tony Dungy is doing, he gets the biggest excitement out of talking and influencing and changing the life of one person, as underscored with his prison ministry work that he was doing from the first day that he was in Tampa, working with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Abe Brown Ministries. It's the same thing with me as well, too. If I can be comfortable that I contributed significantly to the life of somebody, anybody, to pursue what they were going about, that edifying and encouraging and inspiring people is what motivates me more than anything else, that's fine, because I enjoy what I'm doing and I'm going to continue to do it, hopefully with the degree of excellence that people would expect, and certainly that I aim for, as my mother taught, saying that we all in our family have a spirit of excellence and don't let anybody tell you you don't. That's what I want to continue to do. And hopefully there are a lot more of those opportunities that are still coming down the pipe.
Boy, Mr. Brown, this has been such a treat. This has been great to catch up. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be my guest on Untold Truths with Telly. Please keep up the excellence and continue to inspire broadcasters such as myself, who would love to follow in your footsteps. So I can't thank you enough, Mr. Brown, and please be blessed.
Well, since you continue to call me Mr. Brown, then I'm just going to bust you out and say you continue to do well because of that awesome bride with whom you've been blessed, and Miss Toya as well too. Continue success in what you're doing, Telly, and I look forward to doing it again soon, Telly.
Oh, thank you so much. As James Brown on Untold Truths with Telly.